Someone already asked you this, and you didn't even notice what they took from you. And that's the part that should bother you. Because right now, someone in your life already knows exactly where you're weak. Not because you told them directly, but because you answered a question you should have never answered. It didn't feel like a trap, did it? It felt normal, casual, almost harmless. But it wasn't. The moment you answer it, you lose something you can't get back. See, most people think weakness is exposed through pressure, confrontation, conflict, but that's not how it really works. Real observers don't push you, they let you reveal yourself. They ask one simple question, then they watch. And you talk, you explain, you justify. You fill the silence because it feels uncomfortable. But that's exactly what they're waiting for. Because every extra word you give is data. Every hesitation, every over-explanation, every attempt to prove yourself, it tells them where you're unsure, where you need validation, where you can be controlled. Most people don't even realize they're being studied in real time, but you are. And the scariest part? They don't need to do anything with that information immediately. They just store it for later, for the exact moment it benefits them the most. And when that moment comes, you won't even remember the question that gave you away. And that's exactly how it spreads. Because it doesn't stop at one moment, it becomes a pattern you repeat without even realizing it. They don't need to break you, they just need you to talk. That's the game. It's never about the question itself, it's about what the question unlocks inside you. A need to explain, a need to be understood, a need to prove something that was never questioned until now. And the second that need activates, you start giving away more than you should. Most people think they're just having a conversation, but you're being read, line by line, reaction by reaction. Weakness isn't forced out. Of you, it's volunteered. Think about it. Someone casually asks, "Why did you do that?" Simple question, right? But instead of answering directly, you start building a case. You over-explain. You justify. You add unnecessary details. Not because they ask for it, but because something in you feels exposed. And that feeling, that's the leak. Most people ignore that moment, but you shouldn't. Because that's where control starts slipping. In relationships, it gets worse. A simple "what's wrong with you lately?" And suddenly you're opening everything, explaining your stress, your doubts, your fears. You think you're being honest, but what you're really doing is handing over a map of your emotional pressure points. And the hidden enemy doesn't interrupt you. They don't challenge you. They just listen. Because every word you say is saving them effort later. In social settings, it's even more subtle. A joke, a small tease, a light question in front of others, and you react. You try to correct it, defend it, laugh it off while explaining. But in that moment, you've already confirmed something, where you're sensitive, where you seek approval, where you can be pushed. Most people think power is about what you say, but the truth is much darker than that. Power is about what you reveal without being asked. And once it's out, you don't get to take it back. Because now they know exactly where to look next. And that's where most people get it completely wrong. They start blaming the question, the tone, the person asking it. But that's not where the power is being lost. The real danger was never the question. It was your need to answer it. What if the real test is whether you can resist answering? Think about that for a second. Because the moment you feel that internal pressure to respond, to explain, to clear things up, that's the moment you've already stepped into their frame. Most people don't even notice this shift. But you can. It's subtle, a slight discomfort in silence, a mental urge to fill the gap, a quiet panic that if you don't speak, something about you will be misunderstood, and that's the illusion. Because the strongest person in the room is usually the quietest, and there's a reason for that. They're not quiet because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they understand what speaking costs. Every answer is a trade, information for control, exposure for temporary comfort. And most people choose comfort without realizing what they're giving up. But you're starting to see it now. Communication isn't neutral, it's a battlefield. And every question is a move, not aggressive, not obvious, but intentional, designed to pull you out piece by piece. And the one who reveals less always controls more. Watch closely next time. Someone asks you something simple. There's a pause. In that pause, everything is decided. Most people rush to fill it, but you don't have to. because silence does. Something most people can't handle. It creates pressure. It shifts attention. It forces the other person to sit in uncertainty. And suddenly, the roles start to reverse. They start wondering. They start adjusting. They start revealing. Because now, they don't know where they stand with you. And that uncertainty, that's power. But only if you can hold it. Because the next move you make decides who's really in control. Because the next move you make decides who's really in control. And this is where it shifts. Not by speaking better, not by explaining smarter, but by saying nothing at all. The moment you don't answer, the game reverses. Most people hear silence and think weakness, awkward, passive, unsure. But that's because they've never used it correctly. This isn't accidental silence. This is deliberate, measured, controlled. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people reveal everything. Watch what happens. Someone asks you a question designed to pull something out of you. Normally, you would respond instantly, but this time, you pause. Not a nervous pause, a calm one. You hold eye contact, you stay still, you let the space exist, and suddenly, something shifts. They start filling the gap, they rephrase the question, they add more context, they begin explaining themselves even though they were the one asking. Most people can't tolerate silence, but you can, and that alone separates you. Because now, instead of you being analyzed, they're exposing themselves, their intention, their curiosity, their insecurity. All of it starts leaking out simply because you didn't rush to respond. That's the first level of control. Not reacting, not feeding the moment, letting it breathe until the other person breaks first. And they will break. Because silence creates pressure, and pressure forces movement. Most people think dominance is about having the right words, but real dominance is about controlling when words are used at all. You're no longer playing their game. You're changing the rules entirely. They expected access. They expected information. They expected you to give something away, but instead, you gave them nothing. And that nothing, it makes them question everything. Because now they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know where you stand. They don't know how to read you anymore. And that uncertainty starts pulling them in, closer, deeper, until they start revealing more than they ever intended. And once that starts happening, you're no longer just silent. You're in control of what comes next. And once that starts happening, you're no longer just silent. You're in control of what comes next, because silence was only the first layer. What comes after is where most people fail. They either keep staying silent too long, or they break and give everything away again. But you don't do either. You shift the frame. When you stop reacting, you start controlling. That's the difference. Now, when a question comes at you, don't accept it as it is. You reshape it, redirect it. Sometimes you answer without really answering. Other times, you turn it back, and they don't even notice it happening. The question was never meant to get an answer. It was meant to get control. So instead of giving them that control, you quietly take it. Watch this carefully. Someone asks, "Why were you so quiet earlier?" Most people panic slightly. They explain, justify, soften the moment. But you pause just enough. Then you respond with something like, "Why does that stand out to you?" Now the focus shifts. Not aggressively, not defensively, but precisely. They were trying to read you. Now they're being read. Most people won't catch this move, but you will, because you're no longer trying to satisfy the question. You're deciding what the conversation becomes. That's control. Another example. Someone asks, "Do you always do things like that?" It sounds casual, but it's loaded. Most people rush to defend their behavior. But you don't. You tilt it slightly. What makes you ask that? Now they have to explain themselves, their intention, their angle, their assumption. And while they're doing that, they're exposing everything they were trying to extract from you. That's how the dynamic flips. You're no longer being evaluated. You're the one observing, guiding, positioning. Most people think control is loud, visible, dominant. But real control is subtle, almost invisible. It's in how you respond without giving away anything real. It's in how you redirect without resistance. It's in how you make them speak while you stay unreadable. And once you reach this level, they can't pull anything from you anymore. Because now, you decide what gets revealed and what never does. Because now, you decide what gets revealed and what never does. And that changes everything. Not just how people see you, but how you see yourself. Because you're no longer the person who rushes to explain. You're no longer the one trying to be understood. You're the one choosing what deserves to be said. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. Let that sink in. Because most people walk around with open doors, giving away pieces of themselves to anyone who knows how to ask the right question. But you don't do that anymore. Now, when a question comes, you don't feel pressure. You feel choice. You measure it. You weigh it. And sometimes, you let it pass without giving anything at all. Most people talk to be accepted, but you stay silent to stay in control. That's the shift. It's internal first, then it becomes visible. People start noticing something different about you. They can't quite read you anymore. They can't predict you. And that uncertainty, it commands respect. Without you saying a word, power isn't in what you say, it's in what you refuse to say. And once you understand that, you stop playing defense in conversations. You stop giving away leverage for comfort. You stop answering questions that were never meant to help you. Because now you see them for what they really are. Tests, probes, open doors. And you decide which ones stay closed. Because the real power was never in having the perfect answer. It was in realizing you never had to answer at all.